2 weeks ago, approximately, there was a unification between two of the Arab sects, between the Hamas and Fatah.
Palestinian.
And I was ecstatic about that, not because I really care about their politics, but because it was taking the blinders off of people who thought they were some kind of separate body. Now, for those of you out there who don't understand between Hamas and Fatah, so there are two Arab sects, we call them Palestinian governments, let's call it. One is Fatah, which comes from the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and one is Hamas, which I think was created in the 80s, which was, I would call it, a more religious terrorist organization. Now, for me, there was nothing new here. They're both, in my eyes, terrorist organizations, and I'll explain why. But in the left eyes, at least those who were claiming and advocating making deals with Fatah because they're the moderates, well, I think this kind of takes the blinders off and says, all right, you know what? Maybe you were wrong. I mean, I'm sure Isaac, you're going to justify. I just want to explain to the viewers out there that Fatah, by the way, the name, comes from the 48th chapter of the Quran called Fat. And that 48th chapter of the Quran tells the story of early day Muslims when they tried to take over Mecca. They made a peace treaty with Mecca. And when the people of Mecca agreed to the peace treaty, then they ransacked the city. That's where the name Fatah comes from. But I'm sure that Uri will explain how they're different.
By the way, their name is an acronym for the movement for the liberation of Palestine, but it's not my issue at all. Look, you know what, Ari? I think that having the Palestinian Authority back in responsibility of the Gaza Strip is an Israeli national interest. But put that aside. How do hold on. How do you react to the fact that we now know that the person who's responsible for this reconciliation is no other but Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Donald Trump, the president of the United States, a president that you voted for? How come, I believe, or you supported, I don't know whether you actually voted for him, that's his doing. It's not, Zahava Gal'on of Meretz or Avi Gabay of the Labor Party. It's Jared Kushner. He's the shidduch maker.
I'm always entertained by you. I really am.
By me?
When the Arabs are blowing up buses, it's Netanyahu's fault. When Fatah goes together and unites with Hamas, a genocidal radical Islamic terrorist organization, it's Jared Kushner.
This was declared. Come on.
You're never able to put the responsibility on the people themselves because that would burst your leftist bubble. Because if you would have to admit...
We're not. We're outside. We're in the opposition. This is the U.S. administration who was pushing for this reconciliation.
I can't hear you because you're talking over me. I said if you had to actually admit that they were one and the same, your whole ideology would blow up. But you can't do that. So you start blaming Kushner.
Blaming? I'm praising him for doing that. I'm just saying that he was the one who was doing it. How do you deal with that?
I see. So you're okay with Fatah and Hamas coming together.
I'm okay with the fact that there will be a responsible address in Gaza rather than Hamas, which, as you said, uses terrorist policies against Israeli civilians. And we have an interest to have the PA controlling the passageway between Israel and Gaza and between Egypt and Gaza. And we need a viable address in Gaza. But what I'm saying is that this is not me. I don't have any power. I'm in the opposition. The U.S. administration was responsible via the Egyptians for this reconciliation.
So let me ask you a question. What does Hamas want? What's their goal?
I don't know. You can ask them. I don't know. I'm not their...
I know their goal. Have you read their charter?
I heard about it. But they had some kind of changes now. But,
their charter comes out...
As I said, I want the PA there better than Hamas. And that's what this reconciliation is doing.
I asked you what Hamas's goal is. Why
are you asking me? I don't know, and why are you asking me?
So if you're ignorant about that, let me explain to you. Hamas's stated goal is to destroy Israel, and not Israelis, not Zionists, but Jews. So that being said, you're telling me that you're okay when they make a united, this Fatah, the moderates, get together with Hamas, whose stated goal is genocide of the Jews.
I don't pick my enemies, I only pick my friends.
What was that?
I do not pick my enemies. I only have the option of picking my friends.
That's beautiful buzzwords. That's really sweet. But however, now reality has to hit. Hamas is looking for the genocide of you. So now you have the moderates who teamed up with them. They're not in control of Gaza.
By Jared Kushner's doing. You're not dealing with the fact that this is the U.S. administration and specifically the Jewish son-in-law of Donald Trump, who was the shidduch maker there. This is now known. So please explain to me, why do you ignore it And why do you think this is, if you think it's so bad, how come you don't say he was wrong?
Can you explain to me how Jared Kushner is responsible for the unification of Hamas and Fatah, please?
It was revealed that he was the person pushing for this, together with Jason Greenblatt.
Give me some. I have no idea what you're talking about.
This wasn't all over the news, maybe because you're in the West Coast. You didn't reach it yet.
Give me some concrete evidence.
This was all around the news in Israel. Breaking news. This is these are facts.
Uri, give me some concrete.
So what you're saying is that. So okay, you haven't heard about it. You think that if
concrete evidence.
Right now, I don't know. You're not around. This was all over the news. But put that aside. You think that if he did it, he made a mistake that is jeopardizing the state of Israel?
Again, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a motorcycle. That's not the point.
But
the point
theoretically
is right now,
speaking, and again, Ari, after this broadcast, I suggest you Google it and you'll find it.
Okay.
But
meanwhile, again, the fact that Hamas and Fatah are making one should be a problem for you. Because if the moderates are getting together with a genocidal radical Islamic terrorist organization that wants
in the case that Jared Kushner did this, he promoted genocide towards Israel.
Uri, who cares who did it?
What do you mean, who cares? You supported a president. This is his most trusted person, and he's the shidduch maker.
Jared Kushner did it. Wonderful. Now what? You still have an organization that wants you dead. And your peace partners are teaming up with them.
And that's why I'm happy that the PA, which is working hand in hand together with the Israeli military apparatus and security apparatus, is now the address in Gaza. It's better for the Israel safety.
Uri,
and therefore, I thank Jared Kushner for doing this.
You have an organization, Hamas, which has not changed their views to carry out genocide on the Jews.
But they have less power now after this reconciliation agreement.
It's good that the Fatah teamed up with them. You somehow think that's okay?
But it's not teaming up with them. It's taking responsibility on the Gaza Strip, which is good for Israel. And that's why, by the way, I believe Jared Kushner did this.
Fatah is, again, maybe you don't understand. Fatah is not in charge of the Gaza Strip.
No, the PA
Hamas is running the parliament. They have the majority. Now what happens?
They don't have a majority. They had a military coup there, and now they gave up the passages and gave it to the PA.
I'm not talking about Gaza. Hamas are the majority also in Yehuda and Shomron, also in the West Bank for
I don't know. Unfortunately, they didn't have an election for over a decade now.
Right, which would also give you another inclination that we're dealing with people who don't understand democracy. But again, to that, you're blind to that. You're blind to Hamas, who want to kill you. You're blind to Fatah, who just teamed up with Hamas. You're blind to the fact that they don't believe in democracy. And
So this week, Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that his coalition is going to put together an investigative committee to investigate the Israeli peace and human rights organizations for their funding from countries abroad. Let's start with you, and maybe I'll
Okay, first of all, I think that it's very important that our state will keep their abroad. I mean, we need to say what we know and what we want to make in our state. And today, some of the Europe countries try to change the situation in Israel with their money, and it's not a democratic way. If you want democratic state, we must keep this. To speak, we talk, you came from the left side of the political map, I came from the other side, and we can talk, we can understand one each other, and we don't need them. We don't need their tools, their money. They just want to change the democratic way. It's not our system.
Right, but there are several issues here. First, it's a method that Netanyahu is now using, is a method that was used both by Putin, by Erdogan, in Iran, by the way, in Mubarak's Egypt, and also in Assisi's Egypt, not in the democratic world that you referred to before. of, delegitimize the organizations that work here for human rights by saying that they are foreign agents. Now, I used to work, a disclaimer, I was the director of B'Tselem USA, so I represented B'Tselem, a major human rights organization here in Israel, in the United States. I'm very proud of that. Now, this is a method of delegitimization of your political rivals. Second, the whole issue of transparency in the left side of the map is fully transparent. You have everybody knows where the money is coming from. It's all transparent. Some of it comes from European governments. By the way, European governments also fund human rights organizations in the United States and in Europe itself. They fund human rights. To find it. I'll show it to you. They even fund, for instance, organizations that work against the capital punishment in the United States. So it's not something unique to Israel. The only places that fight this funding are dictatorships that go against this funding. And by the way, Europe is investing in Israel, in science, in health, in many other ways. Europe is our biggest friend when it comes alongside the United States. So it's not an enemy state, okay? And third, and this is something that I'm very privy with because I founded the Front for Defense of Democracy, which investigates the non-transparent funding of the right-wing organizations. We know that most of the money that comes to the right-wing organizations, most of it doesn't come from Israel either, but it's not transparent. They don't tell you who are the donors. Nobody knows who are the donors of organizations like Im Tirtzu.
I understand your point.
And if you want an investigation, that's where you need to have the investigation.
First of all, I agree with your last point. All of us need to say who is the donor of us.
We have a scoop here. If you're with me, because we're going to promote such a law.
First of all, the other scoop is that you are the enemy of my soldiers. I mean, not you.
I'm an officer at the IDF.
Not you specifically. I appreciate you, but your organization, B'Tselem, that you are so proud that you were this director in the United States. This B'Tselem have some acts against the soldier, my soldier in the IDF.
What do you mean?
I was major. Just a minute. Hold on. Just a minute.
Due to video by B'Tselem, you know now. So who?
We talk about.
Because
I am major in the
promoting...
paratroopers. I was major in the paratroopers. And I know that it's so complicated to be a soldier in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. It's so complicated. And if I will look for someone to find small peanuts that he did, like that you make in B'Tselem, in Shalom Achshav, in
Elor Azaria shot point blank.
It's extremely story.
But that's a story of B'Tselem.
No,
you should be thankful to B'Tselem.
Story. I'm talking about the usual things that B'Tselem make against IDF, against Tzahal.
It's not against IDF, it's against the Israeli policy.
Just a minute. If you talk about human rights, I will be with you. I will be with you. I will stand with you.
Even with Palestinians?
Even Palestinians, yes. Against human rights, it's one of my holy and my education system in Shomron.
But you should know that because of your presence there,
it's to say that we need to keep the human rights.
So many soldiers defending you because you are colonizing a hostile area.
So let's make it different. Human rights, it's a very good thing. Against my soldiers, it's to be enemy of this state. And if some
enemy of the state?
Against the soldiers, yes.
It's not against the soldiers. I'm a soldier and I worked for B'Tselem. I'm not against the soldiers.
You were a soldier. And
I'm a reserve officer. I'm a reserve officer. I'm not against the soldiers.
Yes.
I'm for the soldiers. I want to end the occupation that exists there because of your presence there. Outside the Israeli state borders, as we mentioned before.
First of all, we have not occupation.
We don't have an occupation.
No, it's not occupation.
You would not be able to live there without the army defending you.
They can vote. They can have a job.
Will you be able to live there without the army defending you?
They have industrial zones. They can make whatever they want, and they did it. So let's speak about my soldiers.
This is condescending.
When my soldier going to Nablus, look at this. When my soldier walking to Nablus,
these are soldiers
they walk into Nablus
civilian homes.
Just a minute. They need to keep to my line
because they want freedom. And they want freedom like we did all across our history.
They are my brother. And I need to keep them.
Who are the Palestinians?
No, the soldiers. and I need to keep
right, but they shouldn't be there. They're there because you insist living in a place that is outside your country's boundaries.
You know that when we sit right now in Tel Aviv, someone sit right now in Jenin or Nablus to keep us, to save our life.
No, to save your life.
And no,
if we would have had a border with a Palestinian state,
is a dolphinarium, someone
because we occupy them and they want freedom.
Yeah, but
So Ari, you know, this week the government made the decision to create an official ceremony to celebrate 50 years of settlements in the West Bank, in the Golan Heights as well. And there was a big dispute over this event. And I think the major issue was the decision of the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court, Judge Miriam Naor, to say to order all other Supreme Court judges not to come and to be there. What do you make of it? Do you think it's a political decision by the Supreme Court? Is it? I think it's, you know, it's the obvious thing to do, but I guess that you have a different opinion.
Right. Well, of course you think it's the obvious thing to do because you come from a left-wing organization, which exactly proves the point that the decision was political. Now, the problem with the Supreme Court is the following. The Supreme Court is a judicial branch of the government, and the Knesset, we have the legislative branch. Now, in terms of deciding...
The Supreme Court is a branch of the government?
It's the judicial branch,
no,
not of the government.
It should be totally independent.
We have the judicial branch and the legislative branch. In terms of defining what is a national ceremony, that is only the legislative branch. You know, it's only the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, has the power to say this is a national ceremony. And what's done in the country is when that happens, you invite all the first grade, in terms of first row people in the country, which includes the president of the Supreme Court. Now, she decided not to go. And again, this was a purely political issue. It's problematic. It's undemocratic.
I have to ask you, if tomorrow morning there will be a left-wing government and they will make the decision to create a big ceremony over the issue, an official one, over the issue of the Oslo Accord or even the disengagement, do you think that we should obligate the judges to come and to attend because the government made it official? I think the government tried to actually create like a drill and to show the people of Israel that there is a consensus behind the settlements. But you know that this is the most controversial issue among Israelis in the Israeli society. So you cannot take a stand and say this is the official position and now everyone needs to come and to salute to this opinion.
Well, let me just clarify some facts for you. The consensus is done by election. That's 11 years. Your left-wing camp.
One second. This is the majority.
Okay. So the government is a right-wing government. That was the elected government. They decided to have a ceremony, for 50 years of Jews coming back to Judea and Gush Etzion, which was before 48. 1 second. And there were left-wingers at the ceremony. There were right-wingers. There was secular. There was religious. So again, say that it was a political issue. Well, you know, the Labor Party was there. So
no one from Labor Party.
Let me just explain something. 1 second. So Miriam Naor, the head of the Supreme Court, she has no business defining what is defined by the Knesset. It's not in her democratic power to do so.
She's not obligated to obey every order of the government.
So that is a good point.
And if tomorrow morning the government will decide that the illegal outposts deserve the ceremony, an official one, so she has to go there. Anything that the government will make the decision that this is the official, so we are all need to attend because we are getting an order for that.
So the answer is very simple.
Is it North Korea here?
No, come on. The answer is very simple. In Israel, we have something called a practice. For example, the Supreme Court, the President's Supreme Court, is picked by seniority. That is in the same camp of practice as when there's a...
Yeah, but you cannot abuse the practice.
One second. That is the same camp of practice that when there's a national ceremony, you're supposed to go and show up.
But you abuse
the word practice. One second. If the President's Supreme Court can say, I'm going to go against that practice, she can't get upset when someone else goes against the practice also. And to your answer, by the way, yes. No right-wing judge, if there was any, ever in the history of Israel said, I'm not going to that place. However, I will tell you that this same president of the Supreme Court, by the way, went to a left-wing conference, and she went to Jerusalem Day.
But can I tell you something?
Just one second. In Jerusalem Day, by the way, which is, again, it's the same occupation according to the left.
It's a bit different because we annexed the East Jerusalem, and it's also controversial. But can I tell you something honestly? You know, I don't think the only reason that she didn't come was that it's a disputable issue. I think it's deeper than that. I think that the Supreme Court in Israel judges, they know that they cannot attend a ceremony that is being held in an occupied land, that is unrecognized by the international law. I'm telling you, eventually the Supreme Court judges feel that they are part of the bigger community, the international community of judges, of human rights, of values that contradict the occupation.
Well, this is your mistake.
And they don't want to show themselves sitting in the heart of an occupied land, controlled by the army, not by the government.
So I understand your claims, but they're completely...
I'm telling you honestly,
I understand what you think.
She will not say it, but I think this is the reason.
I understand what you think, but it's completely fabricated. Also, she never mentioned anything like that. But besides the point, no. Israel's Supreme Court, its first loyalty is to Israel. That's where the first loyalty is. So your idea of universal...
it doesn't contradict, you know. You can be loyal to Israel and to be against the occupation.
No, that's undemocratic. The first order of the Supreme Court is to abide by Israeli law, not international one. Your statement is undemocratic.
The Supreme Court judges broke the law when they didn't come there?
No,
they didn't come there?
That's right. Supreme Court...
No, this is not a criminal law, you know.
Listen, Supreme Court judges broke the practice in Israel.
Because the practice was abused by the government.
No, there was no abuse. What was abuse?
Abuse because when you are making something, an official event, but it's totally political, controversial among the Israelis. It's not the Independence Day, it's not Memorial Day. It's about the settlements, the most debatable issue in the Israeli society. It was about the settlements, all of the settlements, not just Gush Etzion.
No, it was about Gush Etzion.
No, that's not true.
Yariv, the title was Settlement of Gush Etzion.
No, that's not true.
Which, by the way, I was right outside this. I was there.
I saw the invitation. Okay. It's about the whole settlements, including Hebron, including Tapuach, everything.
Gush Etzion is part of Hebron.
It was located in Gush Etzion, but the whole issue was about all the settlements.
Historically, by the way, just to let you know, I'm sure you know this historically, Gush Etzion was settled by Jews long before 48. And the state, by the way, Ben-Gurion, who's a left-wing...
The Israeli law is being enforced in the Gush Etzion.
Hold on, the state itself, Ben-Gurion himself, Mr. Left-Winger himself, the reason that Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, comes the day before the Independence Day was because he said...
One question for you.
No, let me finish. Was because he said that when the Jews liberated Gush Etzion, that gave the way to liberate Jerusalem.
Officially, Gush Etzion is part of the state of Israel today.
Absolutely.
But we never annex it. Why we never annex it? Why Netanyahu is not annexing the Gush Etzion area? Because there are Palestinians living there, you know?
You said the answer. Gush Etzion is part of the state of Israel. The government of Israel made a national ceremony, and according to the practice...
But never annex it. You ignore the fact, you know? It's not the same like Tel Aviv, you know.
But we're not talking about annexing. You're jumping into something else.
If it's part of the country, if it's part of the state...
But you're deflecting the information. We're not talking about annexing. It's part of the state of Israel, and it was made a national ceremony, and the practice in Israel is that all first-grade dignitaries come to the ceremony.
Yeah, but they didn't.
She has no
they didn't
business.
show up. Not only her, you know.
The Supreme Court, again, if you're a political party, it's one thing. She is not a political party. It is undemocratic.
Obligated.
She basically crossed the legislative branch.
If you are abusing the practice, you are not obligated to come. But I have another issue to ask
one second,
about.
I just have to clear something else. Yeah. She does not have the democratic power to define to the Knesset how they're abusing making a ceremony.
Of course she does.
She absolutely does not. She has no touch on the legislative branch.
She is independent, you know. She is not obligated to the political level.
She is 100% obligated by the political movement.
And I have to ask you, you know, we're talking about her so long, but what about the Palestinians living in this area? You know that the settlers are only 10%.